First, I just wanted to provide an overview of Fieldwire at kind of a high level before we really dive into the product. So at our core, really, there are 3 problems that the field needs to solve, and these are issues for people out on project sites every single day. One, it's just being able to access all the information that you need to build and complete your jobs, and just being sure that it is the most updated information. Second, being able to plan and manage all your day-to-day work, so ensuring that your team that's in the office, in the field, or even potentially on another project knows exactly what they need to do, and they can communicate really quickly with other folks on the job. And third is just having live updates and reporting from really what's going on at the point of install from the field perspective. I think that a lot of these issues, they've been made a lot more difficult while people are still, working home from COVID. So really this solution is trying to figure out a way to integrate all the documentation, all the communications, and really everything that happens out on the project site really in one place. So first I wanted to show you this sort of overview, and we're going to be diving into more of these once we actually get into the demo, but this is kind of a bird's eye view of everything that we're going to run through. So the problem I just described, we really try to solve it with a cloud-based solution where you're able to capture data if you're on your laptop, your phone, or your tablet. On the left-hand side, this is really just about accessing all the information that's out on site. So being able to view your plan drawings, be able to pull up your specification documents, access your submittals, any sort of file or documentation that you need to have out on the project site, you'll be able to pull it up with you when you're out in the field. There in the center, that's all the planning and managing work that needs to happen sort of on the execution level. This is really where we built tasks to pretty much just eliminate all those inefficient emails. And it really just allows you to assign out work with the goal to really just keep your team accountable and also organize all the communication, photos, and information just stored in one single place, rather than having a lot of dispersed communications going through emails or text messages or phone calls. And we're trying to encourage everything to funnel through one place. And then third, it's just being able to capture progress during the project, allowing you to pretty much just easily export out information that you collect from your device and be able to send it out to stakeholders on a job. So these are things like daily report forms that you need to fill out, safety audit forms, JSAs that you need to generate, before the job starts, or even just photos that you document on your project. And we really want to make it super easy to be able to export it out and then shoot it out to people, regardless of if they're on Fieldwire or outside of Fieldwire, making it easy to do that. So next up, what I wanted to jump into is a little bit about task management. So first, I just wanted to point out that I know that there are a lot of software tools that are extremely good for construction on more of the planning side of the business. So things like project scheduling, design, or any sort of office-based project management type tools. But there are less that are focused just on sort of the field execution side of the business. And this is really where tasks come into play. So during the demo, I'm going to try to go through best practices that most contractors use to figure out how they're going to leverage the task management system, and we're going to do it specific to the mobile platform. But the main idea here is that the Fieldwire tasks that we're going to show, they can be used to pretty much track anything on a project. So think of things like if you're on a job and you have to-do items that you typically keep on a notepad, or deficiency or punch list items that you're probably having to track on a spreadsheet or something else, or even just inspections that you're bringing out into the field, with paper on a clipboard. And Fieldwire is going to pretty much just allow you to sort of transform that all to a digital tool. So kind of at a high level, a question that I really get all the time from customers is like, what does a task even mean and how is it relevant to my projects? I think task, it's an internal term that we've kind of like assigned to this feature that we have, and I feel like it's sometimes something that we need to describe a little better. So the answer is that tasks are very customizable. They can be used for anything, sort of as I mentioned, to plan things in advance. So well in advance, so say you just get your project drawings, you'll be able to plan tasks out, a few months before construction even starts. Or it's ongoing things that you need to manage, or anything that you need to really prove completion of later on. So I like to think of them as sort of like 2 very separate buckets. One is their like reactive views. So these are issues that come up on site that really require resolution. So imagine that you're going out on site and you notice there's some sort of like safety issue that needs to be addressed immediately. That'd be a really good example of like a reactive issue you need to resolve. Or it can be something like a constraint that's impacting progression of your work. So say you go out on site to finish installing your doors or windows, and maybe the framing is incomplete. So you need to be able to track that constraint so you can notify your general contractor and make sure that that is resolved without you being sort of blamed for not being able to go in and finish your work. Or it can be something simple, and this is what, to be honest, a lot of our customers use tasks for, is just defects and punch list items. Fieldwire is really pretty easy to set it up for punch lists. So if you have a project that's nearing the end of your job and you want to set up a punch process, feel free to reach out to me and I could help you kind of get that up pretty quickly. And then lastly, it's just ongoing progress photos. So just really simply tracking photos on a job. And the second bucket is more proactive. These are planned use cases. So if you have a pre-punch list that it's gonna that in certain areas you're gonna need to plan out a punch process for certain areas of the project, you can set those up in advance. Or inspections that you have, or QA/QC items, or if you're trying to track things like installation milestones on your job. So I would say the planned use case might be, for example, if you have a project schedule with Microsoft Project or something like that, you can actually upload a spreadsheet of those items with our task importer. I won't go too much into detail with that, but if you're interested, reach out to me and we can kind of talk through how that could work. All right, so now that I've kind of gone through that, we're going to jump into the mobile demo. I'm going to try to just walk through kind of the main key features just to make sure everyone's familiar with how to navigate the tool. I'm probably going to jump into the web version at the end if there's time, just to show kind of some of the main differences with the iPad and web. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen here, and you should be able to see my iPad view. So I'm sure this screen is really familiar to a lot of you, but this is really your project launch page. It's where you're going to see all the projects that you've actually enabled on your iOS device or Android device. So up on the top here are the ones that I've accessed. You'll notice there's others that are not enabled yet. So these are other projects that I probably would be able to access on my computer, but I just haven't enabled them yet on my iPad. And that's really just intentional to save space on the device. So similar to web, of course, you can search for projects based on project name or code. I created one called Last in High School Project, so I'm just going to go ahead and select that one. And here we've actually, jumped into the tool itself. So now I've actually accessed this Last in High School project portal, and now I'm going to be able to navigate and identify all the documentation that I have for this project. So the first thing I wanted to kind of point out is on the upper left-hand corner, that's really your main navigation toolbar. So that's really going to be the same regardless of where you're accessing Fieldwire. If you're looking at it from your computer, your Android, your phone, your iPad, those navigation tools are really going to stay the same. So obviously plans, that's what I've selected here. This is where you're going to be able to access and navigate all the drawings that you have in your project. Tasks, that's the module I kind of talked about in the beginning. And we'll dive into that a little bit more. Photos, every photo you capture on the project will always be saved in that Photos tab, and we'll show you the different ways you can add them. Forms, files, 3D models, and then other settings there too. Below this, you can see there's this other tasks bar. You'll notice all these other items here. You'll see I've selected My Tasks. That just means it's highlighting all the tasks that you've actually created. Watched tasks are any tasks that you've actually kind of been looped into. So if I were to select that one, it'll actually highlight the tasks that I've been looped into. And then all tasks. And then all these items here, these are the task categories. So for example, there's ceilings, concrete, demo, design. This is just how the project team has decided to really group together those tasks. So typically for like a general contractor, the customer will usually group their tasks based on project discipline. But obviously that might change if you're a subcontractor. Maybe you would group tasks differently, maybe like based on testing or QA/QC, you might have different ways that you want to group them. And of course, all these categories, they can be deleted. You can add new ones, kind of depending on how you'd like to group them. So if I were to select just drywall, for example, you'll notice on the right-hand side on this building 2 floor plan, you'll see how there's a little 1 in the upper right-hand corner. That just means that there's one drywall task that's actually on that plan. And same with the others. If you were to select the other categories, it just kind of shows you, where these tasks sort of exist on the drawings. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into an individual sheet. One thing I wanted to point out is sometimes we have projects that have, thousands of drawings with many different folders. Just know you can collapse the folders right here. So if you were to make it a little bit easier to navigate to the different drawings folders, you can do that. And I'm going to jump into this building 1 floor plan real quick. This is going to bring open the individual sheet. So we'll talk a little bit about the different tools that you have on this sheet. One thing I wanted to point out is as soon as the drawings are actually uploaded, it's going to automatically read the sheet number in the lower right-hand corner. One thing it's going to also do too, it's going to pick up all the detail callouts that you have on your project. So for example, this A301 detail, you can actually jump to that detail really quickly. So if you just sort of select that with your finger, it's going to pull open the other building elevation. Just kind of makes it a little bit faster to navigate through the different details without having to go back and forth. You can actually create your own hyperlinks as well if you'd like to. So if you wanted to add your own, so for example, if I want to drop another portal here in the drawing, you can choose a plan that you might want to jump back and forth to. So often customers, they'll actually do a little bit of setup in the beginning just so, if they're constantly having to go back and forth to different drawings, they might just create those hyperlinks in advance. All right, so now I just wanted to kind of walk through the different markup tools kind of in general. First one on the lower right-hand corner, you'll see the task. We'll talk about the task again a little bit later. Here are the different hyperlinks that you can add. So for example, I just showed you the hyperlink to other project drawings. You can also just drop camera photos directly on the plans as well. So for example, in the center of the screen, I've dropped this little camera image. So you can upload photos directly when you're out on site. You also have an integration with 360 photos as well. So you can load those directly to the camera icon too. You can also attach links to files directly on the plans as well. So if you want to attach specifications or inspections or any sort of file that you've loaded to the Fieldwire project, you can actually just link those directly on the plan. So that just makes it really nice if you have field workers that are wanting to access certain files, they can just quickly grab them directly from the plan. You can also generate forms here too. I wanted to call out the markups as well. So you've got different highlighter tools, different multi-shape polygons. You've also got arrows as well. I won't spend too much time kind of walking through those. Also various shapes, cloud shapes, different polygons. You can also add text. You also have this measurement device as well. And then just, of course, you can choose which color you want your markup to be. If you actually select the private markup, that means any markup that you create is only going to be visible to you. Nobody else on the Fieldwire platform will be able to see it. All right, so I wanted to kind of point out now, like if I'm looking at this drawing and describe a little bit about how a task might be used. So I'm kind of zooming in to this library here. And say I'm out on site and I'm noticing there's some issues with the flooring that needs to be addressed before I'm going to be able to go and leave this room. So in that case, it might be a task that I'll drop to identify it as a flooring issue that's preventing me from being able to complete my work. So if I drop that pin directly on the plan and opened it up, you can see I've titled it at the top as needing to replace the damaged carpet tile. Because I've dropped the pin directly on the drawings, you'll see it's linked on the top with that little tile view. So if I wanted to actually just click that, it'll zoom me directly back into where that pin existed. You'll see I have a checklist that I've created just to figure out exactly, make sure I'm assigning exactly what needs to be done for this thing. I can add back and forth messages, attach a photo. You can actually mark up the photo as well. And then include all your sort of back and forth communication or any sort of messages that otherwise would have required a phone call and anything like that. Just to note too that this can actually be shot out really quickly via email. So if you were to just select this little square and arrow, you can just quickly shoot this out. And that'll just send a summary of this issue out. And these emails can go to people that are actually outside of Fieldwire too. So if you want to be able to document something that's going out on site, you can send it out via email. One thing I wanted to note too is if I were to actually select edit, this will bring up the task attributes page. And to kind of describe what this is, if I select the status, that's kind of saying like, where do I see this issue, on my project? Is it a constraint that's really holding up work from occurring? Is it more of a QA/QC type issue, or is it a punch list item? In this case, I selected P1 constraint because it's really preventing me from going and completing my work in the room. I'm categorizing it as flooring because that's kind of the sub trade that I want to be able to, that I want to group this task into. And then I've included a start and end date. Really what that does is it just pretty much puts this task on a calendar view so that the office will be able to see kind of when you intend it to be started and when you want it to be completed. You can also add watchers as well. So this is kind of, you can think of this as like an email CC. So if you want to loop people into this issue, you can just select multiple people and then make sure they can, be updated when there's any changes. And then as soon as it's completed, the field person can just select at complete. And that'll actually just notify everybody that's in this task that the damaged carpet tile was completed. All right, so I'm going to go through and walk through a couple more workflow examples of how tasks could be used. So I'm going to actually select done in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to collapse my drawings and jump into the electrical folder. And I'll go ahead and select this site plan electrical. I'll go ahead and zoom in. A lot of electrical contractors, they typically use Fieldwire to generate as-built and redline markups. So often they'll go out on site and make sure they're documenting, how their conduit's being routed throughout the project. So if I was out on site and I'm, doing my conduit installations within this building, and I'm able to route all the conduit, with my tool, and say, you get to this location and maybe you're unable to finish the conduit in this area because maybe there's, framing that's incomplete. Maybe you, intended to actually go through and finish your conduit run, but, work is sort of preventing you from being able to complete your work. So what you could do is you could circle the area. This way, everybody that is viewing the project will be able to see these markups. And this would probably be a perfect time to drop a task pin. So I've actually created one and dropped it directly in that area. And I've already filled it out with information. So if I go ahead and pick that up, you'll see I've identified it as, the framing is incomplete and you're unable to actually finish the conduit installation. You can include some back and forth messages saying, hey, your crew went out on site to finish the conduit and wiring run, but they weren't actually able to complete the work because this framing is only 50% complete, so they weren't able to go and finish it. So in this case, they wanted to make sure they're documenting that their full crew went to mobilize out on site and they weren't able to finish the work. So they're able to snap a photo, showing the incomplete framing, even add a 360 photo if it helps kind of add context and explain. And then when you look at the attributes, you can see it's a P1 constraint. It's been assigned out to the superintendent or the general contractor. That way it's letting him know, hey, our electrical subs were out on site to go through and finish this framing or finish this conduit run, but there's some framing that's incomplete. Pretty much just notifying him that, he needs to go through and make sure that that is finalized so that the electrical contractors can finish their work. You can see I've categorized it as electrical. I've noted the location and included a start and end date. And you can also add a cost so that, say, a couple weeks or a couple months down the line, say you want to pull up as your electrical subcontractor, all the issues that came up that really prevented you from being able to finish your work. And that way you're keeping a record of all the different, cost impacts for all these issues that have come up on your project. So another example, if I were to zoom back out, say you have a building inspection and you do a once over of the building just to make sure you're catching any issues that come up. And say you've noticed, various issues throughout the building that you're wanting to document. So you drop a pin on the plan, say you noted as these conduit penetrations throughout the building that need fire caulking. Again, you can sort of explain exactly what's going on, that you have the inspection scheduled for a certain date, and you're able to attach a photo describing exactly what issues need to be addressed. And say that this same issue exists in multiple parts of the project. So you'd actually be able to select these pins, duplicate them, and put them on different parts of the job. That way it's just notifying the superintendent all the areas where this conduit needs fire caulking. So in the upper right-hand corner, if I wanted to see every task that's really been generated on this plan, I can select this little tab here. It's going to pull up all the different tasks that are on this individual drawing, kind of showing the different statuses. So I'm going to go ahead and back out real quick. And if I were to jump down to the tasks tab, this here is every single task that's been generated on the project. You can see here that they're organized based on status. So you can see all your overdue tasks, all your internal coordination issues, all your P2 and P1 constraints, and all your QA/QC type items as well. You can sort this in different ways. So if you wanted to sort it based on project discipline, you can select the discipline. And you can also sort it based on assignee too. This way you can see every different person on your project that still has work that they've been assigned. So one thing I wanted to point out as well, as I mentioned, any photo that you capture on the project, they're all going to be accessible here. So regardless of you drop the photo on the plan or you've added it to a task, they're all going to show up on this Photos tab. You can actually navigate directly back to the task too. So here, if I'm looking at this photo in the upper right-hand corner, I can just select this little toggle icon, and it'll bring me directly to the back and forth messages. And I can even select the plan and zoom in directly to the area on the project. One thing I wanted to note too is you can also generate forms with Fieldwire. So for example, you've got these daily reports, inspection requests, RFIs. So if I were to select this daily report number 2, you can see how I've been able to fill out all this information. It'll automatically capture the weather, identify any delays, input your general notes, log all the work that you've done, attach any photos from the work for that day, and then you can go ahead and actually sign it off. All right, so that's pretty much everything I had planned to go through today. Again, went through how to navigate your project drawings, the different markup tools that we have, and went through a few different examples of how to navigate tasks on mobile. We're going to go ahead and switch over to some Q&A. And again, if we can't get to your questions, definitely write them in and I can follow up with you after the webinar.